Muslims are willing to say, hundreds of years ago, we did this. Like, yeah. And then, first of all, that wasn't even true, but you have to go hundreds of years. He has to go 60 years to talk about leftists being for free speech. It's ridiculous. We have to declare war on these two threats. And I mean that. It's an ideological war, a physical war, if it has to be, with the Islamic world, but also the internal threat. We have an enemy within. This party that we have, it's an alien party. It's alien ideas, it's un-American ideas that have been transported here and embraced by this old party called the Democrat Party. But they were never any damn good to be with. I mean, they fought for slavery. It's a dirty party, historically speaking. The KKK, that was their jackboots.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here today with Bosch Fawstin. He's a cartoonist and a bit of a sage, I would say. Good brushstrokes, as you can see behind him. Just as handsome as his drawings. And I'm going to let him self-describe a little bit. It turns out we both grew up in the Bronx and went to a PS one or the other. We can trade numbers later. So we, I guess, have the same benefit or demerit of having gone through the New York City school system. We can talk a little bit about New York City afterwards. Bosch, thank you for coming on.
Appreciate for having me. Thank you.
So I follow you on X.com, and X is a good cartoon letter as well. X-Men and so forth. So right. You're a mystery. I think that's why Elon chose it as such. What captivates your mind and sensibilities and artistic talent, as people can see behind you?
I mean, I grew up, as I always say, raised to Albanian Muslim parents in the Bronx. And all kids draw. All kids draw. You drew, everyone listening drew, and some just continue. And I was fascinated by it. I was just fascinated by faces in particular, I got to say, ever since I was a kid. It wasn't encouraged. I will say that, and not encouraged at all in the home. It was actually discouraged, aggressively at times. I didn't care. I just loved drawing. I love faces. I love drawing superheroes. I love reading superheroes. And that was the whole thing. That was the beginning of it. And then, reading comic books and understanding heroism and that kind of fiction that I absolutely love. Whether it's nonfiction, even like biographies. I used to read a ton of biographies about people that I admired, that I was fascinated by. But comic books, love superheroes, and there was always this idea. It was never clear where they stood ideologically, but it was always understood that they're good guys doing good things against bad guys, and that was important for me, especially growing up with Islam, where everyone outside the door is considered alien, not good, not part of us. Particular Jews, because non-Muslims are hated, but there's a special hatred for Jews. And that's even in moderate Muslims. As we were raised, quote unquote, moderate Muslims, we went to the mosque once, twice a year only in the Bronx. Sorry, in Brooklyn, not the Bronx for some reason. I don't know why. And I remember a cousin of mine actually telling me, my brother, Hitler would have loved you guys. And we look at each other like, what? He meant our look, because we're not average looking Muslims. I have a lot of Muslims who are, they look almost Arab, with their brown hair and dark eyes and so on. But very few, I guess in our family, blonde and red hair and so on. Anyway, so I was fascinated by it, and I started drawing, winning contests ever since I was a kid. I won like a sculpt of a horse once, and then a drawing and King Kong and all these type of things. I was fascinated by it, and then eventually, I might be going too far, but in my mid-teens is when I left Islam. And it wasn't anything concrete like an attack or something that I was, disgusted by. It was just the dishonesty, the fundamental dishonesty of the ideology of those who observed it a little more seriously in my family. They lied like they breathed. And that really put me off. I hated liars. I hated lies. And I just left. And when I was searching for something else, I thought maybe I'm just going to be myself, quote unquote, whatever that means, and just follow the truth wherever it leads. But I eventually found Ayn Rand's work. Eventually found Ayn Rand's work, and I just fell in love with it. From The Fountainhead to Atlas Shrugged to a nonfiction, read it all. And then I was going back and forth about what I would do as artist, because I always was in the arts. I like to sing, I like to draw, I like to paint, I like to act, I like to everything. But I said, okay, what do you really, really want to do? So I want to write and draw comic books, and that was it. And that's when I went to school. Only night classes in New York for about half a dozen years, but most of it was done on my own. And again, it was the heroic fiction that I loved, that I wanted to try to bring into comics, and also a philosophical bent that is pretty much lacking in comics in a lot of ways. As I was telling you before about the general basis about good guys, but there's no ideology behind them. There's nothing concrete about them, and some of their morals are questionable. I won't kill no matter what. It's like, yeah, but sometimes you have to. Sometimes you absolutely have to. If the Joker kills 100 people and you can stop him by killing more, you're going to have to do it. But they will not allow them to do that. That's the liberal philosophy, the leftist philosophy. Even though leftists, they're not strangers to violence, as we know. They kill, but it's just something about imposing this kind of thing on our superheroes and making them really fools in a lot of ways at times. Uh, you got one guy killing people in a Captain America comic, and he bemoans the fact that he has to pick up a rifle and shoot him, and he's like completely destroyed by it. It's like, you're a super soldier. You killed Nazis in World War II. What's the problem now? Doesn't make sense. So those type of things I hated growing up. So my own character Pigman, uh, it was 9/11, post 9/11. I went to school the night before. I remember that. I was in the Manhattan. And every time I walked to this particular school, it was the Twin Towers right in my sight. And I don't know if I looked at it that night, I got to say, because it was always there. Why would you keep looking at it, But it was always there. And it rained like hell that night. I do remember that. The next day, saw the atrocity and had family call me and so on. And I started thinking I said, okay, I want to respond to this with my art, and I want to use my background. And it all came flooding back. My history. I never read the Quran, though. I mean, we had a Quran in the house, but it was in Arabic. Nobody could read Arabic. You know, Even Arabs, a lot of them can't, which is strange. But so I dove in. I studied the religion as deeply as I could. I wanted to know basically if those guys who flew the planes to enter buildings, if they were devout Muslims, if they were true believers. That's what I wanted to confirm, because I had my beliefs that they were, but I needed to confirm it. And then I started thinking about superhero. What kind of superhero would face these guys? Would he be a ruthless big guy, ex-Muslim like me, knows their language intimately, knows their culture intimately, and he also, as I always put it, he exploits their bigotry by wearing pigskin leather. It's a fun little idea, but it's true. They go nuts, especially the true believers. So that's what I did. I wrapped my anti-Jihad super in pigskin leather, and then I thought I want to go a little deeper, a little further. So how about if I make myself split in two as twins, born again Muslim, recovered Muslim, and they go at it in a story, and the recovered Muslim creates Pigman within the story. So it's two stories in one: the battle between the twins, and then the battle between Pigman and Super Jihad, and then also culture-wide comic book conventions, panels, courtrooms, when he gets sued, battles on the battlefield, on news, and it's just something that it's fun. It's something that I can actually just feel like, I don't know. I can't imagine not responding to the atrocity in any other way. Meaning, I don't know what people were thinking at the time, but we have now Muslim superheroes that Marvel and DC publish. We don't have anti-Jihad superheroes. We have Muslim superheroes. That's insane to me, because in World War II, all our superheroes fought Nazis and the Japanese. They all fought our enemies in the 60s. Tony Stark fighting the Russians, the Soviets. And then post 9/11, there's Muslim superheroes with no mention of why we speak about Islam, which is jihad. No mention at all. So it's just like this idea it's basically enemy propaganda done by our enemy within the left. That's what it is. So that's a general basis. And just one thing also, you might know me as the winner of the Muhammad Cartoon Contest.
Hmm.
That's my name these days. Sometimes people say, "Oh, that's the winner of the Muhammad Cartoon Contest." That's all they know, which is fine by me. My cartoon is more famous than I am. But it was 2015, a few months after Charlie Hebdo, the massacre, and Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer were at this conference outside protesting this conference a few months after the atrocity in France. And they were having a conference called Defend the Prophet. And they protested it. They said, "This is insane. We just had people, innocent people slaughtered, and you're defending this long gone, if he ever even existed, prophet, this warlord." And so at one point, Pamela thought, "You know what? We're going to have a comic book. We have a Muhammad cartoon contest and have it at the same event, at the same actual location." And then they released it through Breitbart and others. And I said, "You know what? I've been drawing Muhammad for years. I might as well get paid for it. So hopefully I have a good chance at this." And I started drawing it. And that's when I drew the "You can't draw me, Muhammad with a sword, threaten me. That's why I draw you." And it ended up winning. And 20 minutes after my speech, I remember after I was announced as winner, I was told that there was shooting outside, and we were all sent in the back of the location. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, you defend free speech, you understand its importance, its crucial importance in our world, and then you got these two savages coming in there to slaughter us, and the only ones who got killed that night were them. I mean, it's a hell of a night. I'm still amazed at how it worked out. Really, it could have been a far worse, but that's a general basis. I probably went on a little too long, but thanks
Oh,
again.
that's incredible. Uh,
Yeah.
there was, I assume, there was armed security, or
Oh yeah,
who
packed, packed. They had a SWAT team. They had undercover guards. They had cops there. They had security guards. They really, Pamela and Robert Spencer, they had the event and they understood the threat. That's why I said at one point in my speech, I said, "Why do you think we have this kind of security? Because Islam does not mean peace, and we understand that."
Yeah.
And they're really stupid. I mean, one thing about these jihadists, they're really stupid. They go into Texas from Arizona, drive in, and they think they could just shoot up the place. And it's really stupid because we anticipated this. And but then the sinister thing was that the FBI was involved with them in some capacity. There was an FBI agent who was texting them, "Tear up Texas," uh, egging them on. Now they're probably going to do their own thing anyway, but there was something dirty about the fact that our supposedly protective services were involved with them, and not only that, but the FBI agent was driving in front of them. And when they got out of their cars, started to shoot up the place, he drove off. And then
Oh,
there's a picture of it. Yeah, this picture of it covering his face, but he has Islamic garb. Is he Muslim? I don't know. Was he a double agent? I don't know. I've tried to get information. I've been tagging Cash Patel and Dan Bongino over and over again. I don't think we'll get to the bottom of it, but I want to find out, because the worst thing about that event was that the FBI knew that they were going to shoot up the place and did nothing to stop it and drove off. So they were going to allow us to die. And now it was Obama's FBI. So you got to think about, okay, were they going to allow that to happen and therefore say, "See what happens when you draw Muhammad? See, it's terrible. It's terrible to encourage people not to." That's my assumption, because it's that dark. Um, Terrible.
yeah, no. This kind of, I posted something on X recently. Like, I wonder how New York City is going to deal with a man who is young, photogenic, by political standards, really good looking, uh, grew up in a Muslim household, but it's also a leftist. It's like,
Yeah,
I wonder if anybody in the United States can remember anything like that.
it's
And
unbelievable. A communist.
clearly it has Obama overtones. Uh,
Yeah,
and here we come again. What is it? Are we moths to a candle?
maybe. I mean, maybe. I think a lot of us are, unfortunately. A lot of us don't like the truth, don't want the truth, don't want to act on it, don't want to speak it. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. It's terrible, and it's across the board. It's on the left, it's on the right. Um, and these just it's a hostile force, and this guy's a hostile character. Absolutely is. He slaps on that smile, but he's a bad guy. He has some really evil ideas that he's shoving down our throats, and it's unfortunate they can't even muster up any kind of opposition to it, whether in their own party or even the GOP. So you can take him out easily, I think, if you're just honest about it. and just have someone there worthwhile saying the things that I think the voters want to hear. Now he's telling them all these lies about everything will be free, this and that. It'll be government supermarkets and all that. It's just it's nonsense. But nonsense seems to motivate people. It seems to get them to at least vote for people because they know a lot of it's bullshit, but they don't care. But yeah, he's it's shocking. At the same time, it's almost inevitable by the way we've been, how weak we've been. Um, we still pretend that we're not at war. There's this idea that people say in the past, they say, well, 9/11, that was a long time ago. Hey, every single week now, there were hundreds of people who were murdered by Muslims across the world. I post this one thing, the religionofpeace.com. It's every week. It's all the stats, and it has the number of countries, how many suicide bombs, how many people died, how many people were injured every single week. And we're talking 1,000, maybe 1,000 a month, if not more. So it's a global jihad, and that's why I don't get too. I know some Indians sometimes tell me, "Hey, talk about the Indian jihad." I said, "It's a global jihad." I talk about every aspect of it. I talk about the one in Europe, the one in Africa, the one in African countries, the one in Israel, the one in India, the one in America. Even though it's tamped down in a lot of ways, and then you have this post October 7th Jew hatred that exploded at that time. It's pretty shocking that at one of the worst attacks ever against Jews, the Jew haters came out in full force in a way that I haven't seen it in my lifetime, at least. The casual glorification of Hitler on X. Tucker Carlson's a little more crafty than Candace Owens. She's an imbecile. He's a little more crafty where he's not as obvious as she is. But he has guests on who do his dirty work for him at times. Like that general guy, always trashing Israel, like that Darryl Cooper guy, trying to downplay Hitler's evil and trying to make Winston Churchill to be the great villain of World War II. There's a lot to talk about, so if you want to go back and forth, sorry. I get
No,
to.
no, that's perfectly fine. I don't know if when Tucker got unmoored from
Yeah,
Fox or wherever it was, he joined X, and he's an independent agent, but he needs to get paid, and
absolutely.
people have his name Tucker Carlson,
Yeah,
and I imagine there are payments in kind. You're out there, and you become your own personal Overton window.
yeah,
So if the money is a certain place, I think people will shift, and we've seen that. I kind of always liked Tucker Carlson. I never really liked Candace Owens,
yeah.
um, but I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's bringing up topics and he's willing to have people on his show of one stripe or another, and at the end of the day, free speech does involve kind of a debate of ideas. I'm a science guy. I went to college as a chemistry and physics major ultimately, and things play out. I mean, is gravity true? You just kind of do it a number of times and say, oh well, that's what it is. It's things go this way, whatever, and and with the world of the dialectic and conversation and whatnot, it has to kind of be put into this chamber. So you can see the flight path of the ideas. And so I'm not specifically against his having on comedian Dave Smith or Daryl Cooper and whatnot, as long as they are debated ideas and they're
Yeah.
not promulgated. But I think, I sort of feel that ultimately the truth will out. The question is whether, your opposition will allow the truth to out. You see it. There's a guy I really love on Instagram or whatever. I think his name is Itay Benda. His
Is
ITAY.
it the comedian with the impressions?
No, this guy is
Oh,
amazing. His last name is Benda, and he's Israeli. He lives in LA, I think. But he does spot on. I can't tell you specifically, but based on the audience, he does one on one, plays music for somebody, but they're from Tunisia. He
I
does
think
pretty
I
much
know what you're talking about now.
all over the world, and it's just I'd love to have him on the show.
He challenges, he brings on Muslims and so
Well,
on.
this
And
is the scenario. So he's
yeah,
split screen like this,
yeah,
and he has the flag of the country they're from. He does Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Syria, you name it, Lebanon. Um, and he says, "Oh, where are you from, my friend?" And he'll say, "I'm from Syria." and he goes into what I gather is a perfect rendition of their favorite romantic song. And he does it in Arabic. He does Greek song. He actually does he does Polish. He's got a knack for doing songs from other countries and languages he doesn't speak. So he does them from, I've heard him do Czech songs and
Hmm.
Croatian songs and whatnot. Anyways, he's really good at this. But the Arab ones are interesting, and the Muslim ones. So he'll do a song, and they're like, "Oh my God, that was so beautiful! You are incredible!" And they'll be speaking to him in Arabic. It's like, I don't understand the Arabic. What, you understand? You spoke this. You did this song so beautifully. You speak Arabic, and he's like, "No, I don't." Da, 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 da. Well, where are you from? It's like he's from Israel, and this becomes like a litmus test of
Yeah.
where their minds are, whether their minds can be open to the fact that somebody is this, speaking of Pigman, is
Yeah.
this Jew pig, essentially in their
That's
minds, who can speak, who can sing lyrically. They already heard the song. They had the evidence in front of them that he can do this, but they
right.
have to like square that circle. It's like, no, I didn't hear that. You are terrible. You are, and it's like you must actually be Muslim. People, some of them say, in order to sing that well, whatever. And anyway, there's a variety of different tastes. Some people just like, zip off right away. Some
Yeah.
people call, they hate him, and they go into the Palestine thing. But as far, he'll debate. He's not really a debater because he's a musician. But he wants to bring. He says he's bringing love, and it's an incredible thing. I watch these things. I'm kind of hooked on them the last couple months or so. I've probably seen like 50 of them. But they are like essentially beautiful moments. What's interesting though, what I wanted to kind of get at
Yeah.
was as far as the knowledge gap. I've seen this in another video of that type where they'll say, "Well, you're killing Palestine." He's like, "Well, look, it's not. There's no Palestine per se." And their actual factual knowledge is just very insulated and isolated
Yeah.
in these countries. They're not getting any kind of the dialectic of the conversation
And they
that
don't want it too, though. A
across
lot of they don't want it either, though. They're not going after it either,
right.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah,
I mean the interwebs are there, and you can
exactly.
you
You
can
can find
figure
out
get a VPN and just figure things out on your own if you
absolutely.
want. But most of it tends to be just kind of numerical group thing. I don't think that anti-Semitism really grew so much. I think it's more the fact that the most brazen purveyors of it, the people who, as you pointed out on X, they say, "Oh, there was no Holocaust, but yay Hitler."
Yeah,
um,
it's
that
ridiculous.
that crowd just has gone from the enclaves of Egypt or Syria, whatever, and spread out. I mean, the Syrian diaspora after their kind of endless civil war, spread through Europe, and we have kind of feckless Angela Merkel,
Mm.
opening the floodgates and whatnot. It's just kind of changed Europe, and
She's trying to prove that she's not Hitler. You know what I mean? Like, look, I'm not racist. Look, I'm bringing
I
in
know. This is the thing.
this.
I think they had to prove, as Germans say, or as Europeans in general, anybody who has been complicit with Nazis, like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, we killed all those Jews, but we understand the other now. We
yeah,
are better. We're a different version of ourselves. So we're going to take, we're going to really bend over backwards and take it. Now the
yeah.
Jews, I'm Jewish, and it's like, my folks, a fair number of them, my ancestors, their families, whatever. Obviously, the ones who lived, but we lost a lot, and but my folks pretty much wanted to assimilate. They wanted to become that thing. They wanted to become
Yeah,
the dentist or whatever. They wanted to have a trade and fix people's teeth,
yeah.
or become a surveyor and do this, do
Despite
that.
what happened, despite what happened, and and that's the thing also in terms of as a people, you know, Jews in general, they want to flourish regardless of what this horrific thing that happened. And then you have Muslims who actually committed a genocide with the in Turkey with the
Armenians.
yes, they did that, and then they claim that they're being genocided right now. They celebrate the Holocaust, deny the Holocaust, threaten a new one, and then blame others for committing one against them. It's and again, it's like they didn't go through what the Jews did, and they act like they're under assault every day when they're not. They're the assaulters. And in terms of being open and having conversations like as you were trying to allude to, maybe Tucker just that. The problem with Tucker is that he won't have on a Robert Spencer. He won't have on certain people. He won't have on good opponents who would actually challenge him. He'll have a politician like a Ted Cruz who'll go flop all over the place, because he's a politician. He might be smart to some extent, but he's going to be caught on certain things. But he sure as hell will not have that. So it's rigged in a lot of ways. His conversations. I don't trust him. I know that he wants to get a certain effect. He wants to mock. Look at the way he treated Ted Cruz, and look at the way he treats the quote unquote president of Iran. It's
Yeah,
two different
that's
things.
actually a point. Yeah.
Complete respect for him, and he doesn't cackle with these Muslim dictators that he interviews. Never cackles. He cackles with Ted Cruz. He cackles with everyone. So there's something really dirty about his whole approach. I can't stand him. I cannot. And I had a little problem with him a few years ago, even when he was on Fox, when he was trashing capitalism. I was like, what the hell is this guy doing trashing capitalism? I don't get it. It was very weird. He's like trying to appeal to some other crowd. And then, as you said, when he got off the teat of Fox News, he had to get some money, right? So he has this Omid Malik, if that's his name. I think he's a Pakistani guy, Democrat, lifelong Democrat, who funds his media company. And not only him, probably a few Muslims. He made a semi-commercial for Qatar, talking about the beauty of it. And it's like he's in Saudi Arabia with his twin, Piers Morgan, and they're trying to challenge each other about. They're the same thing to me. I mean, they are. They're just media whores for 30 years, going any which way that they think they can profit in, and it's unfortunate because for him, because he had a semi more respectable reputation, Tucker. But I think the real Tucker is right now. I think this is him, quote unquote, unleashed with no real, the only money men he has right now are Muslims, and he's fine because he's like, well, and if you remember also when he was asked about October 7th, not long after it happened, he goes, I'm America first. We got a lot of problems here. It's like, you can't even take a moment to say this is a horrific thing that happened. You can't even say that as a human being, and that, so he kept saying he was America first, and then he went on a world tour, if you remember. He went to Romania, he went to South America, he went to Russia, he went to Islamic countries, everywhere except Israel. And then he talks about it to Megyn Kelly. He goes, well, we always go to Israel, me and my family. We never talk about it in any positive way. If that's even true. I don't even know if that's true. So I don't trust him at all. I think his whole thing has been devious, dirty, dishonest. I can't stand him. That's all.
I was just in Europe. Speaking of your Albanian heritage,
Yeah.
we spent a fortnight, I guess. First 10 days in Hungary, and then 4 days in Vienna, and we did our fair share of touring around, and also museums. Hungary, people forget that the Ottoman Empire extended to the gates of Vienna, and Vienna was the last stand in 1683. It's not that long ago,
No.
17th century. This is,
and if they broke through, we have a different world.
I know, and even in Hungary, I got to say, there's just some amazing stories that Hungary had been, its own kingdom into the 15th century, and I'm going to get my centuries right. So I guess into the 16th century, and there was this little conclave. They had the royal family. They were hanging out in Buda, which is the other half of Budapest, and the Bey, the B-E-Y, the kind of prince of the Sultan, called them out, and they were going to have a conclave to work out peace. And so this is the 16th century, and they come out on horseback, and they're going to meet someplace, but they want to meet someplace neutral, so they do that, and they're going to talk about this and that. In the meanwhile, the Sultan's forces attacked the castle after all the king and the royal family had been pulled out. And such as it was, the soldiers were disorganized because they didn't have their leader and whatnot. They fell, and there was basically desolation. Back then it wasn't. I don't know what it is. War we see here and there. Back in those days, they took over. They took everybody. They took. They raped the women. They took them back. They killed the men, and they brought the children back to become slaves. And so Hungary didn't have kind of the integrity that Austria or the German little tribelets had back then for having been overtaken. And so they retreated to the hills. They formed these castles and whatnot. But their approach to kind of the Angela Merkel opening of the EU is different from Hungary to Austria. And you see it. I'm not saying it's because of that. It's not
Right.
if then that. But their
But
approach to
but
being an
there was
independent country at this point. Hmm?
maybe this is part of that history also that they recognize some of it at least, and they want to maintain that. You know what I mean? They know
Right.
that they actually saved Europe in a lot of ways. So I think there's that then the part of them that wants to maintain that. I think it's possible.
Yeah. So in Hungary, at least for now, they are content with being Hungarian because I mean
Yeah.
that's a nation. And they've had a long history there, like 1,500 years, 1,800 years, or whatever, of being something like that, speaking that language,
Yeah.
and um, but even just crossing border, we were there and we were Slovakia briefly and Austria. In Austria, they're trying to go the route of Berlin and Vienna and
Mm.
whatnot, and so one of our many Uber rides in Vienna, we actually had an Austrian. He said we had a great time. He was a great conversationalist, hilarious guy, about my age and former school teacher or something. And he just knew so much stuff about Vienna. And he was imbued. Every place we passed, he could tell you about this statue, what that meant, and how this force, and what. And the stories he told us on,
And he
we
was
had a
proud.
lot.
He was
Yeah,
proud.
absolutely. But
Yeah.
every other single rider we had, they were competent. They took us from A to B, but they were all pretty much Pakistani, one
Mm.
Iranian guy, one Egyptian, whatever. But they could speak some English here and there, but they
Wow.
had nothing to say about Vienna.
No.
It was kind of I'm not saying this is a total window. It's not a revelation because it was just my little travel with my wife and younger adult son. But clearly, this essence of what is this place? I mean, Vienna is nothing if not filled with history. Like
No.
every block, statues and so forth, and you have a sense of what a place is. What is a Viennese waltz? I mean, do those other Uber drivers know what it is? Do they care?
No.
And this kind of people make fun of nationalism, but nationalism is clearly a step above tribalism, and it may
Yeah.
also be a bulwark against global governance and so forth. In order to have kind of the liberties, you need something that's close enough to home where
Yeah.
people aren't killing each other over trivialities, and also they have the ability to maintain who they are and fence things in.
And so something about just something that just struck my mind in terms of Albania, right? They had it. Turks went in there 500 years ago, and they took them over and converted them. But they've retained their language. They've retained a lot of things about them, and still there's something you're not going to find jihadist groups per se in Albania. You'll find some Albanians who end up being Albanian Muslim who end up being jihadists, but
Mhm.
it's still something that there's resistance there. I like that. There's a little proud, a little pride there, and also even with communism when communists took over, it was the
Yeah,
same
they went
thing.
all
Like,
right. They
yeah,
had that,
they got it both.
got the lunatic Enver Hoxha.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolute.
But he actually aligned with, I think, China. He didn't
I
want
mean,
to align with the Soviets. I think that was kind of a thorn. Yugoslavia did something similar, but it was just to be somewhat different. And Albania is kind of an odd case.
yeah,
They speak a language that it's not it's distinct from the
yeah.
others all around. It's not Greek. It's not Italian. It's not Slavic.
No, they have
Um,
their own language and they've retained it. It's interesting. And also, you know about the Skanderbeg story? He was because what the Turks did is they took these the healthiest of the boys, the young boys in Albania, and they forced them to fight jihads across Europe and across the world. And one guy relayed to him because he didn't know where he came from. He was so young when he was taken. He goes, "You're Albanian. They took you when you were a kid and this and that." So he went back to Albania, fought the jihads for 25 years, and when he died, the resistance collapsed. And it's interesting because growing up, we have a Quran in the house, and we have a drawing of Skender Bale in there. And I found out later, I was like, wait a minute, you guys are
Took a long
glorifying a guy who fought the jihads, who fought Muslims. You know what I mean? It's just the contradiction is pretty funny. And then even ourselves in America, right? We think about 9/11, we think about some other attacks, but 1700s, late 1700s, early 1800s, you got the Barbary Wars, the Muslims, the Muslim pirates taking over our ships, taking our men and women, making them slaves, and to the point where Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had to make a joint session of Congress and tell people we got a real problem here.
yeah, it's
And
in
these,
that song, "The Shores of Tripoli."
yeah,
I grew up. I sang that song, and had no idea
no, me
what
neither,
referring
at
to.
all. until my studies.
I saw Tripoli on the map later.
Yeah.
And a funny thing about knowing the word Tripoli is actually it's not Arabic. Obviously,
No.
it's Latin. There's three polis, three cities. It's related to Napoli in a sense. Like Napoli is Neapolitan, which means
Yeah.
new city. And so I live in Newton right here. So it's actually the same thing, same word as Napoli and Neapolitan. But the North Africa was when they talk about the Egyptians like Ptolemy and whatnot, those are Greeks. The Greeks and similar were all across North Africa, and so Tripoli was named. It's got an Italian sounding name, whatever, but it was not Muslim.
Yeah.
All those places across the upper arc of the Mediterranean, the North Africa. But Islam has been a conquering force. Obviously it's Arabic is the language. Well, that's from Arabia, and
Yeah.
where's that? It's not. It's not in Morocco, and
No.
it's not in Iraq, and it's not in Malaysia. So it's kind of like everyone seems to kind of not look. We all learned the British Empire. We learned about French colonialism.
Colonialism, Islamic imperialism across the entire world. It has been that case. They took over Spain even, and Spain, and that's when they talk about the coexistence, the beautiful coexistence. That's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. They still paid non-Muslims still had to pay the jizya, which is a
Yeah.
poll tax for being non-Muslim. They still did that. Is that a peaceful coexistence? Of course not. But they need to, and think about this also. When they say that, right, they got to go hundreds of years in past. Like, okay, they're telling me that you got to go hundreds of years past to tell us that there was something decent that happened. How about like Bill Maher, right? He talks about the free speech movement in Berkeley. It's like free speech. It's like you have to go back 60 years to talk about when you were in this one window of free speech. That's a joke. You can't talk about now. You can't talk about for the last, like the century. It's ridiculous. And there was a violent thugs in there. They had to be taken care of, and it wasn't a free speech movement. It wasn't anyway. But it's just it's comical to me that these people are willing to again, Muslims are willing to say hundreds of years ago we did this. Like, yeah, and then, first of all, that wasn't even true. But you have to go hundreds of years. He has to go 60 years to talk about leftists being for free speech. It's ridiculous. They never were for free speech. Not leftists. Liberals, yes. Not leftists. Absolutely not. So that's a whole different story.
I was saying I was kind of a science guy, and the word algebra was an odd word. I didn't really understand the derivation, but that's Arabic. I think it's Al Quratami was the guy that's named after him. They kind of shortened it all up to algebra, and so there are some that's Arabic, and it maybe was a kind of a highlight point. And during various if they had enough kings, whatever. Certainly, some of them might have been a little bit more moderate, no doubt. But it is one of those things where you have to do a little bit of cherry picking to find the upside. I think in what is called the Islamic world, you have to go far and wide to find the the artists, the thought leaders,
Oh,
the great scientists and whatnot. And it's kind of it reminds me, it's a little bit of like speaking of 9/11 of that era when George W. Said, the Constitution is not a suicide pact. There are aspects of kind of the free speech and open societies that can be subverted and be misused and hijacked in a sense as a suicide pact. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but it's certainly we have a tendency to think that everything can be kind of discussed out, but at a certain point, whoever takes over, whether it's Hamas, there's like one man, one vote. Well, Hamas is one man, one vote, one time, and a lot of the places, whether it's the Ba'ath Party or Muslim Brotherhood, whatever, they're in, and that's that, and that's the end of it. You don't have this aspect of discourse and concord and whatnot.
being challenged.
Hmm?
And being challenged. They won't allow themselves to be challenged. In terms of free speech, sorry, I don't know if you were alluding to this, but we got to make it clear about what is free speech and what isn't. Some people try to tell me sometimes, some libertarians, well, they threaten you, but that's free speech. I said that's not free speech. That's not free speech. They crossed the line of free speech. That's an incitement to violence. That's a whole different thing. That's why I don't. We have to be very clear about what is free speech and what isn't. when you have members in our society, Muslims, who call for the destruction of our country, that's not free speech to me. It's not, because
That's sedition.
it is, and they should be dealt with in some capacity, especially if they're an organization, not just in some indie jihadist, whatever, some independent blogger, let's say. If they're involved with a group that wants to tear down America and bring our government down and bring down our people, they're an enemy within, and they got to be dealt with. And I think the left also is enemy within. I do believe that the left, liberals is a different story, but very few of them left in a lot of ways. They've been
No, no, they moved over.
they've been subsumed by it. And even a guy like what's his name, critical James, what's his name, James Lindsay.
James Lindsay.
Yeah,
Conceptual James.
yeah, that's right. He has a fanciful notion that the answer is liberalism. It's like, bro, they have been bent over, they have been taken over by the left, and they did it willingly. So that's not the answer. It's already destroyed in a lot of ways. And again, you can still fancy yourself individually like a classical liberal. That's fine, but the movement itself is dead. I mean, it's absolutely dead, and it's been taken over by these communists, by these leftists within our country. And so his idea is that that's the answer. I read his book, a few years ago, and wasn't that impressed. I challenged him a few times. He just sends clown emojis. I'm like, what a joke. But that's not the answer. That's not the answer to be more liberal, to be more open-minded. It's just really self-destructive.
Yeah, we used to have an expression that if you're so open-minded, your brain falls out.
Yeah, there's truth in that. And he's a good opponent when it comes to communism and stuff, but then he gets into the problem with him is when he comes to the solution, that's the problem. His solution is liberalism. It's like, that's not the answer. It's not.
So what is the answer?
Well, the answer is just being honest at all times and acting on the truth. Being honest about who we're dealing with, that we have these internal threats like the leftists and the Muslims in this country, across the world, that are looking to undo us from within and using our society against itself.
Yeah.
We have to declare war on these two threats, and I mean that. It's ideological war, a physical war if it has to be with the Islamic world, but also the internal threat. We have an enemy within. That
you said Islamophobes. You didn't mean that.
I didn't say Islamophobes. I said something else. I said the Islamic world or something. I don't. I reject that word, the Islamophobe. I think it's
no. That was a good point. Yeah, you have a post on that you can't. No such thing as an Islamophobe.
It's like saying Nazi-phobe. I mean, to me, it's really reaching from people who want to stop you from being critical of Islam. So yeah, the whole thing for me is tell the truth, no matter what happens, and declare war on this threat, whether it's enemies within or without. And because again, there's a war on America from within, from the left. They want to, do everything they can to just undermine it and subjugate it, our society. And it has to be fought. And a lot on the right aren't even willing to admit that. We have an enemy within. And this party that we have, it's a alien party. It's alien ideas. It's un-American ideas that have been transported here and embraced by this old party called the Democrat Party. But they were never any damn good to begin with. I mean, they fought for slavery. It's a dirty party, historically speaking. The KKK, that was their jackboots. And they went from being great. They were always racist, the Democrat Party, but now they were anti-black. Now they're anti-white racist, but it's still racism. It's the same thing. BLM, KKK, racist, right? Just to really throw our society to hell. I mean, that's what they really want. They want chaos, and they want to try to control that.
Well, if there's chaos, then they can be the tallest dwarf.
Yeah, I know. No, but they want to make chaos and then control it. Say we need control now of this chaos that they want.
I'm only saying the tallest dwarf because I don't think they have innately the talent,
no,
wherewithal to do it. But if everyone gets chopped down and they're, like Monty Python's knights, they want no arms, no legs, then whoever's standing can be the tallest knight. You can be the most powerful. You weren't powerful when the knights were standing. You weren't powerful when the real dialectic was there and the people who could kind of debate you. But if you kill them all off, then you're whoever's the last man standing. it's kind of a funny thing. I have a relative went to journalism school, and he went to Columbia University and then Columbia Journalism School. And I've had my own kind of medical journalistic forays. I've been writing for a variety of different outlets. And I know what it was. He was unemployed during the Obama ascendancy in 2007.
Hmm.
2000, and whatever. He was on everyone's after
Yeah.
that Democrat convention speech. He was on everyone's tip of their tongues, and the Democrats. And this, relative of mine, is a staunch Democrat, leftist, and so forth. But he was out of work between jobs, and he has a long journalistic history. I said, "This is a great story. You spent decades at Columbia, living near Columbia. Do the story of Obama at Columbia."
Hmm.
Because nobody still to this date, there's like no pictures of him aside from one picture with a roommate off campus. There's no pictures of him on campus. Nobody remembers him. It's a total black box mystery. And I said, that'd be a great story. The Atlantic or whatever, somebody would pay you for that. And he says, I would never, even if paid whatever, I would never do that story. I said, well, beggars can't be choosers. You've been looking for money. What's wrong with the story? He says, well, I might find something that's negative. And then that could sink him. Like, well, you're a freaking reporter. Who cares? You're just looking for the news. He says, no, you're a moron. I'm a moron. And he says, you don't understand what journalism is. I said, well, enlighten me. So he said, journalism is to push basically the narrative window towards leftism.
He actually said that and meant it.
Oh, yeah.
That's unbelievable to me that he would actually be explicit about it, because we know that that's what they do. But for them to actually define it, but then again, it was behind closed doors. He probably wouldn't say it publicly, wouldn't he?
I don't know. Good question. I mean, he's a pretty glib kind of guy.
Yeah.
He might also be right that I'm a moron. I don't know. I haven't quite figured that part out.
I'm called a moron every day, and I tell people, well, I was raised Muslim. People call me a genius. I'm like, well, imagine if I wasn't raised Muslim.
Yeah, I got to tell you one quick story. At a certain point, I was made the treasurer of a congregation I belonged to, and I used to joke on the side. I said, it's a synagogue, and I said, through this really smart place, they have a Jew handling the money.
That's right. Did they laugh, or did they think it's?
Some people laugh and some people don't. It's like this concept that everybody Jewish is like really brilliant.
Yeah,
let me just say it's not true. It's like a bunch of people. I think Jews have had to like be a little bit extra smart in a societal sense because they get crap taken away from them on a regular basis. Under the Pale of Settlement in what was the Tsarist Russia,
they've had to step up a lot historically.
Yeah, they were only allowed to live certain places, but they could never own land.
And they had to flourish wherever they did end up.
Yeah, so the concept was, if you can't own land, you can't own a farm, you can't own animals or whatever, you have to have your physical capital only in your brain. So you become that dentist I mentioned, or whatever. Right. You become that thing. So when you have to pack up and there's a pogrom or whatever, you got to move to some other town, you can still be a dentist. And if you own the blacksmith shop, you can't pack that up. You can't get the anvil on a horse and whatever and move very far. And so the idea
more of a mobile career, right?
Yeah, so the Jews kind of were the first everywheres. There's the concept of everywheres versus somewheres. People who can work everywhere. That's kind of the elite classes these days versus the some places, the somebodies who have to be somewhere, working on their HVAC system or something like that. So Jews kind of have been called cosmopolitan and whatnot because they were made to be cosmopolitan because they weren't allowed to be rural. They weren't allowed to kind of be kind of antique sense, bourgeois, hanging out in town, with a legacy. It's kind of funny stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting history. It really is, and as a people in general, I think it's something that is just, again, they were forced to do some things, and they had to flourish wherever they went, and they have in a lot of ways. And people want to call it something else, but it is a matter of them trying to make the most of it.
And it's like doing it one way versus the other.
Was it Lechem?
L'chaim.
Like, I was at a Jewish wedding, and they were saying it, and I love that idea. It's a more of a secular way to look at life, to life. There's something about it. Muslims don't say it. I don't think Christians say it. It's something very uniquely Jewish, and I just like it. It's very
there's some beautiful moments. I mean, with everything else, I kind of had my rebellion phase, at my bar mitzvah. I don't know if you want to hear about me at all, but I'll try to
Please.
make this quick. But I grew up in the Bronx like you, and for my bar mitzvah, we had a new rabbi in, and he was, I guess, a little more liberal, touchy feely, whatever. And he said for the bar mitzvah boys, make a speech. Have it be your thoughts, have it be relational to what we're talking about, whatever, and so forth. So I wrote the speech up, and in a sense, I don't know what it was, whether it was a liberal speech or a conservative speech, but I said, here you are calling us men at 13. We are not men.
Yeah.
You're not giving us much more in the way of responsibility. I'm going to go back to like seventh or eighth grade, whatever it was, and I'm going to be, I can't drive, I can't do this, I can't do that, and so I'm still 13. So either I'm not really looking forward to like 3 or 4 more years of Hebrew school, but either move the bar mitzvah to something societally relevant. Back when this was done, we were agrarian societies, and maybe I would become my own shepherd at 13. Maybe I would take a wife at 14.
Right.
But
But,
but since then things have changed. So either give us some responsibilities like we would have had back on the sheep farms of a couple thousand years ago, or make it 16, make it 17, make it 18, or make it whatever age.
yes.
And I just thought it was I'm not saying it's the best thing I've ever written in my whole life, but
No,
it
but
was
it's
the
challenging.
thing I wrote at the time. I was 13. I wrote that, and
Rebellion.
so I got up. We had the practice session right like a week before the bar mitzvah.
People
So
know what did people know what you were writing, or they didn't know?
Well, he made us do our speeches, and most of my cohort were 13-year-old boys. They were writing, they said, "Oh, this is what happened in this passage of the Bible." Whatever. I
Right.
had this thing which is kind of meta analytic of the event itself, and
No.
so this guy,
Question.
the liberal rabbi, he got up and screamed at me. There was nobody else there. It was just the bar mitzvah boys and the rabbi, and we were in the sanctuary, where we were supposed to do this thing later, like late a week from then. And so he just got up and started screaming at me. Take that, rip that up, get that out of here, and kicked me out. And so I went home. I was in tears. And my father was an attorney and really a soft-hearted guy. I loved him. He's a joke a minute kind of guy. And I said, Dad, we're gonna have, he said, I told him the situation. He said, I was whimpering. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, do you want to keep the speech or do you want to? He said, well, I have to change it. I said, well, I'm asking you what you want. I said, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. He didn't
No.
argue me. He just told me to tear it up. He says, you know what? We'll figure this out. So lo and behold, I said, we'll find you another synagogue. We'll postpone it. We'll do whatever. We had a lot of money on the bar mitzvah because you have the bar mitzvah and then you have a ceremony, like a,
Right.
luncheon afterwards, guests and invitations. So there was some, we were not wealthy. So it's like a lot riding on it. So the assistant rabbi was willing to have me do the speech, and most people liked it. Some people didn't. I don't know. I'm not saying it changed. It didn't change society, didn't change the world, but it did give me the sense that, my dad said, "What do you want?" He gave me this sense of agency, and frankly, that was the genuine gift of the bar mitzvah. That is, he made me feel like a man. He made me feel that my words counted.
He respected
And
you
that,
enough to even ask you, "What do you want?"
yeah, that was an amazing moment. It
That's a
makes
big
me
deal.
it makes me want to like start whimpering again,
Yeah,
even years later.
I hear you, but it's important to hear that from someone that you look up to and admire, and also to be willing to challenge it. Because he said, "Hey, son, basically, if you want to tell us, you can deliver that speech, right?" He was fine with it, right? I
Yeah,
guess he was fine with what you wrote.
he didn't agree with it all. He
It
grew up in
doesn't
a
matter.
more conservative.
But he was still willing to say, "Hey, son,
Yeah,
you can say this."
like he grew up. It goes generation by generation, kind of like more liberal-ish. And so we were in a reform synagogue at that point, and he had grown up. Back then there was no reform synagogues. You did all the stuff.
The
Um,
tradition.
and he didn't speak English as a first language either. I mean, he was born in the U.S., but they spoke Yiddish at home. I didn't even know that. He spoke English perfectly. He did the crosswords, all that kind of stuff. He was a bright enough guy.
I used more Albanian than English in my first years. So by the time I got to school, it was a little tough. People tell
Yeah,
me I have an accent. I guess I do. It's Bronx, a little Albanian, a little English mixed up. I don't know, but I didn't learn English. The only thing I learned, I think, was some cartoons before I went to school, possibly, but that's about it. Because they didn't know English. They just got there, a few years before I was born. So
you have the universal language, cartooning.
yeah, oh, I mean, absolutely, and that's why I told Robert Spencer at times. I said because he gets threats, but I get more, and it's not because I'm more dangerous. It's the fact that the instantaneous understanding of what I do, as opposed to Robert. People have to read his books. You're not going to have Muslims who are going to go to the store and get his books. They see my cartoon and they're like, kill, So that's the only reason why. It's funny. We were having a little competition about who got worse death threats. Robert posted one of his death threats on his cover of the book. It says, Allah is going to take your spine and rip it out and put it back in, and rip it out and put it back in. I said, that's fine and all. But I got one person telling me, you're the reason why I won't feel bad when we all die in a nuclear holocaust. I said, that's it's extreme, it's crazy, and it's insane. But that's a little more than yours, Robert. So we were competing about death threats. And again, I've gotten thousands. I mean, I have 2 volumes of peaceful death threats books, which is all the best, death threats that I've gotten,
Oh, that's
400 in
incredible.
each volume. And I have,
You sell those? Are those for sale?
I do. I have only 4 left of my first volumes. Volume 2 is gone. I have like 4 books that are out of print now, and maybe one day I'll put them back in. But once they're sold, they're sold. And I have 2 volumes of that, and it's death threats I've gotten over Muhammad cartoons. So I published them alongside new Muhammad cartoons inspired by these death threats, which is funny to me. And I drawn Muhammad in all different actors across history, musicians, wrestlers, all different types of things. And I have these death threats, and then I also roast the death threats on their actual threats, because some of them are just really funny, insane. But one recurring thing is that they tell me they want to kill me and all that, and that Islam means peace. That's why I call it peaceful death threats, because they actually tell me at the end of their threats that Islam means peace. It's amazing, but it's true. And again, I got thousands, so I figured I want to go through all of them, and I can still make 2 or 3 more volumes at least. I just haven't had the time to do that. But it's just interesting, and it's just something that's completely unique. And they're my bestsellers after my first book and Pigman. For some reason, I don't know. I guess the uniqueness, I guess.
So Salman Rushdie,
Yeah.
wound up in hiding and then out of hiding, and then he also got attacked. I mean, what's
Yes.
on a physical, literal basis? How do you? I don't know. Do you worry about things? How do you deal with?
Sometimes. I mean, I've been drawing Muhammad for 20 years. 20 years this year. I first drew him after the Danish Muhammad cartoon crisis, if you remember that. And I didn't know about the prohibition growing up. I had no idea. I just knew that at that point. But I don't think it's as much a prohibition as they'd like to claim, because the Shiites have been drawing Muhammad for centuries. So it's not really the Muslim Shiites. So it's not as ironclad, but they would like to, I think, pressure us post 9/11. What else can we stop them from doing and saying? You know
Right.
what? You can't draw Muhammad cartoons. And that's why my defined,
It's kind of like the N word, right?
yeah,
It's like a cultural
yeah.
hex.
Shouldn't be. I think it's just a word, and I think those who try to make it. The worst thing about I don't say the N word. I like to say the word, but it's your show. It's fine. Meaning, if I talk about it, I don't mind. I don't hesitate, but it's not my show.
We
The
wind up
point,
getting kicked off of YouTube and shit like that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I have been actually kicked off. I can't access my YouTube channel, but anyway, the point is that you cannot tell me that that's a forbidden word and have it in mainstream
Right.
Disney movies and Netflix and Apple Music. Don't just
Yeah, it's
stop.
crazy. And the kids, there was a kid who was going up for the draft, and I forget which sport, baseball or football, whatever. A nice kid, whatever, and he's ready. I guess ready for the college portal. So he's a high school kid, but he's one of the. He's going to be like a top player.
Yeah,
And he's at a party, and they have the song on, and he's like doing the lyrics. And so there happens to be a video of him because he's going to be famous soon. He's going to be in this draft or college portal, whatever.
yeah.
And so they release this thing. They like the college pulls his scholarship.
And
You know,
it's insane.
and I'm sure every other kid at the party said he was doing. They're all like mouthing the word, but they didn't even write the lyrics. It's not like
That
he said, I'm going to make
no.
a. I'm going to call it. And
Double standard. I can't stand. And again, I don't use the word necessarily, but I sure as hell will use it if I'm talking about it and about the stupidity around it. And again, I can't stand when you got certain blacks, they talk about it, and then when you say it, they lose their. They don't really lose it. It's about control, and they use it in a casual way, right? But you can't. But the Muslim thing about Muslims is they don't draw Muhammad. It's like, okay, you can continue not draw Muhammad. I will. But their whole thing is to control us from not doing what they don't do. That's a little difference between the two.
So do your cartoons, the books and so forth, comics sell?
They do. I mean, right now I'm actually I was invited to be part of this group called Comicsgate. It's basically ex Marvel and DC artists who were excommunicated by them for whatever reason, voting for Trump, for being open about being part of MAGA, and they have now been part of this group called Comicsgate, which is like an online movement of people who support those cartoonists who are defying the leftist norms, doing their own comics, and they're not even the comics themselves are not necessarily right wing, but they are themselves, and I'm part of it now, and so I'm gonna sell more books. I got cleaned out from my books actually after I joined this group because people didn't know about me. I get a very it's a weird thing with me. I've been on Fox News a number of times. I've been on certain things. I've been on a number of channels, but people they know about me. They pretend they not know about me, and people generally don't know about me. So it's a strange thing with this career of mine. But I'm doing something that no one else is doing. I'm taking on Islam and Jihad through comics. No one else is doing that. People say, well, there was one comic where I did this. Yeah, one comic that you did something that took on a thread that looked like them. Fine. I'm taking on the ideology. I'm taking on that what motivates the actual Islamic threat. It's a big difference. And its helpers on the left and the right, the weaklings in the Republican Party and the conservatives and of course the domestic threat, the left. So yeah, they do sell, and I have my first comic book crowdfund, Pigman. I'm basically putting issue 1 and 2 as a new relaunch of the series. It's just called Pigman. It used to be called the Infidel Future Pigman. It's now Pigman, and it'll be remastered. A lot of new things in there, and by issue 3, it'll be all new material at that point. And it'll be about a few hundred pages in the end, and it'll be collected in a pigskin leather bound hardcover. That's always been my dream, and it'll be Muslim proof, Islam proof in a lot of ways. They can't even read it. So yeah, they it's high and low. It's feast and famine. My career, it really is. It's really good at times. Really like what the hell, but that's just the way it is. And ever since I joined Comicsgate, it's been better for me. I will say that. I've sold more. I've got more eyeballs on Pigman for people who've never heard about him. And again, there was a concerted effort, I think, in a lot of people for not to make sure that Pigman is not heard about. But it's like I got to do it. I feel compelled
Yeah.
to do it. So that's
Yeah,
all.
I'd like the country of Hungary to pay you to do their sultanate interregnum of the 16th century. Do
Hey,
like a history. You should the Spanish, if they had sensibility, we should have you do the same. You know,
I've never been to Europe. I would love to. I've never been there. I was invited to go a few years ago in the Netherlands to be a judge for the new Muhammad cartoon contest and draw Muhammad in the middle of my speech and then announce the winner. I was also invited to go to Israel twice, and it fell through, unfortunately. But I'd never been traveled. I've been to Canada once, I think, and that's about it, really. But I would love to go. I would love to go and see certain things. Japan, Israel, Italy, those are my 3 places. Just something about it. I've always been attracted to it.
well, if you
Is
spoke Albanian, you should. What do they call it? Shikaptire? How do you say that?
Shiptar, the
Was that the language? Or?
the Shipnia, that's what they call Albania, and then Shiptar is like an Albanian. Shiptar, I don't know why it's Albanian, but they call it Shiptar. It's a strange
Well,
thing.
Albanian is not an Albanian word. Albanian is what sounds Italian, a Roman word.
Right. And it's right at the Black Sea, the heel of Italy, and then you got Albania, which is tiny, and then also uh,
Adriatic Sea.
and then you have also Albanians who ended up in Italy in Calabria. And it's so funny. I was talking to this one comic book artist, and he goes, that's an interesting name. Where are you from? I said, well, my parents from Albania. And he had this pause, I think because Albanians probably did some real work in Italy, meaning I think they were more brutal than the local mobs in there.
Well,
I,
apparently the Albanian mobs are like,
they will do things that the others won't. And
yeah,
that's what
they,
makes it
they
different.
come from that. They just were under the total boot heel of this Hoxha.
Yeah.
He was, he didn't want the Soviets and didn't want, he sort of allowed the Chinese, but it basically was a cult of him. And he was
Yeah.
the supreme leader there for like 4 decades or something like
Yeah.
that. And he had Albania
Yeah,
was the worst of all the secluded. He drove those people nuts. I mean, he built a like a uh, these what do they call them, those turreted bunkers. Like every mound that's bigger than a house has a turret on it. They're littered all over the countryside, and people all they ever did was like go into these do these air raid shelters, and he told his whole thing was to tell everybody how bad the rest of the world was, while at the same time the elites did nicely. They skimmed off the people. They kept them, the poorest by far in Europe. And then when they had this dawning, the late '80s, early '90s, they went through a second hell because they were so kind of functionally, economically, and any other way illiterate
yeah,
that the elites took them over the barrel again. They basically had these shares of the national endowment, such as it was, whatever property and whatnot, and somebody came in and scammed them and peeled off all their bits of minimal stock they had and whatever. And they, so there was kind of a second Albanian tragedy. But
yeah.
God bless them. I hope they do a little bit better going forward.
I hope so. I mean, my cousin was going back and forth between Sweden and there, living there back and forth, and he said it's beautiful. It's a beautiful land and all that. Probably is. They call it virgin land in a lot of ways. I mean, it's not been used as much as it can be. But yeah, it's just I haven't thought about going there though. It's so funny. Italy and Japan and Israel. Those are the three places when I can I'd like to visit. Again, the uniqueness about Japan and just the visual.
Japan's lovely. It's just a
Yeah,
great place.
that's right here. And
Yeah.
Israel, because of the struggle, the drama of it all. To be honest, it's a people
Oh, it's
that
an incredible place. I was in Israel in 2020, before COVID. It was January, where it was raining like crazy. You don't think of Israel as a wet place, but we had the
yeah
most. There were actually floods. Some people died in floods. Anyway, um, the incredible resilience of people,
yeah
and kind of a toughness.
yeah.
There's
You know
you know
what? Have you ever seen The Sopranos?
yes.
Those were some tough Jews. Remember the one guy? He was a psychologist. It was hilarious. He was talking about the Jewish mob, and I just loved that line. And his delivery was great. There's something about the toughness, the inherent toughness, and they have to be. They had to become. And one guy said something recently. He goes, "You killed all the nice Jews."
I know. I was thinking of the same quote.
I
Where are the ones
love
that left? I saw. I have that. I have that
I love
meme.
it.
I
It's a
reposted that. I
great
sent that to some friends and whatnot
it's a
because
great
I
line.
personally, I personally think I'm a pretty nice guy, but some people think, oh my God, you're so tough, you're so brutal, you're so, I like, when I play some sports and squash over the years and tennis. I like to win. It's like,
You should.
you
Yeah.
know,
Very
and
competitive.
yeah, I'm competitive, but it's like that's also kind of the joy of life. It's like you're there,
Absolutely.
you're playing for real, you're playing for keeps.
Test yourself, challenge yourself, push.
Yeah,
Um, I just there's something about that appeal to me of a people that just have gotten it pretty damn bad and still want to flourish and still, despite their circumstances, especially in that they're surrounded by enemies and still kick it away. I mean, I love it. I love the nature of that kind of people.
yeah.
I'm attracted to it.
Well, thank you for your work. I had Mike Barron on a couple
Oh
times.
yeah, Mike's great.
Yeah, he's a
I love
great
Mike.
guy.
He's
But
part of it also, and
yeah,
we're part
I figured that. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, he is.
All
Great
right.
writer, a good guy.
So, any parting words for us?
Just I don't know. Just tell the truth. I mean, that's the only thing I think I will say, because that once you tell the truth repeatedly, then you might act on it, and that's what we
So,
have to
if people want to help give you money and support you, where should they go?
BoschFawstin.com. Check it out. It's my website. I have a lot. I still have a few products left there. I call it products once it's actually on the store, even though it is art. I got three left of my Winning Mama cartoon available. It's behind me up there, and three of my recreations left. I also have this one thing where I have Muhammad. It's a photobomb offer where I draw you, and in the back, Muhammad he's photobombing you with a sword and whatnot. It's pretty fun. And Pigman. Fund my comic. Check it out. It's my Pigman campaign, my first campaign, and it's doing pretty well. I gotta say, I'm very pleased with it. So check it out, guys. Thanks,
All right. Well,
Randy.
thank you so much. I hope to have you on again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.